He hired a homeless alien woman to clean, then found her in his bed that night. Marcus had always thought of himself as a practical man. He lived alone in the towering city of Navara Prime, a hub for interstellar travelers and human colonists. His apartment floated high above the busy streets, glass walls giving him a clear view of the glowing traffic lanes below, and the sprawling skyline that seemed to shimmer with a life of its own. He spent most of his days working in his research lab, developing tools that could detect and communicate with alien life forms, which had become an obsession of his ever since humanity had begun exploring beyond the Sol system. His apartment, however, was a mess. In the excitement of discovering a new alien species or perfecting a new device, cleaning had always slipped to the bottom of his list. Piles of papers covered the tables, and the robotic vacuum had broken weeks ago. He knew he needed help, but he also knew he didn't want a permanent housekeeper. That's when he had seen her. She was sitting outside one of the neon-lit cafes near the lower levels, wrapped in a tattered cloak that shimmered faintly under the city lights. Her skin was a pale lilac, her eyes large and glinting gold in the dim glow, and her hair fell in strands that seemed to float even in the weak breeze. Marcus had stopped, captivated. Something about her seemed different but not threatening, vulnerable yet somehow confident. "Excuse me," he had said cautiously, stepping closer. I'm looking for someone to help clean my apartment, temporary, pay included." She looked up at him slowly. There was a flicker of hesitation, almost suspicion, but it didn't last. "Cleaning?" she asked, her voice melodic but firm. "I can do that." Her name was Vera, and she admitted quietly that she had nowhere to stay, nowhere to go. Marcus had hesitated for only a moment. It felt strange to be helping someone so obviously in need, but he had a soft spot for those who had been overlooked by the world. He agreed to hire her, offering her a modest wage and a temporary place to stay in his apartment's guest quarters. The first day she arrived, Marcus had expected awkwardness. After all, she was an alien and he was human. But she moved with surprising grace, understanding instantly how he wanted his lab organized, his living spaces tidy, and even the smallest details attended to. By the afternoon, the apartment looked almost pristine, the chaos subdued by Vera's careful hands. Marcus found himself watching her, not uncomfortably, but with fascination. She worked efficiently, her eyes always alert, her movements precise yet smooth, as if she were adapting to the human environment with ease. She didn't speak much unless necessary, but when she did, her words carried a quiet intelligence that Marcus found himself drawn to. That night, after a long day of cleaning and organizing, Marcus went to bed early. He thought of how much lighter the apartment felt, how the clutter had disappeared, and with it, a certain weight from his mind. He was beginning to think that hiring Vera had been one of the better decisions he had made in a long time. But sleep did not come easily. Thoughts of alien worlds, quantum research, and the odd appearance of Vera at just the right moment filled his mind. Somewhere between late evening and midnight, he drifted off into a restless sleep, the hum of the city outside blending with the soft vibrations of the apartment systems. Marcus awoke suddenly. At first, he thought he was dreaming. The bed beside him had a presence. A warmth that wasn't his own. He opened his eyes slowly. Vera was sitting on the edge of the bed, quietly adjusting a blanket around her shoulders. "Marcus," she said softly, not startling him. Her voice was calm, almost cautious. "You were asleep." He blinked. "You how?" Words stumbled over each other as he tried to process the situation. "I didn't want to wake you," she said simply. "The guest quarters are small, and I thought you might feel more comfortable if I stayed here tonight." Marcus felt a strange mixture of relief and confusion. His mind raced. She was homeless, yes, she was alien, and now she had chosen of her own accord to share his personal space. There was trust in that act, an unspoken bond forming silently between them. "You didn't have to," he said finally, his voice quieter now. He didn't know if he should be questioning or just accepting the fact that she was here. "I wanted to," she replied simply. Her eyes, golden and reflective, met his. "I trust you." Something shifted in Marcus then. He realized that the interaction wasn't strange or dangerous. It was human, albeit complicated by the alien context. It was about trust, about choosing to connect. And that was rare, especially in a city where alien and human lives often crossed without meaning. They talked quietly through the night. Vera asked about his work, his research on alien species, and how he had come to live in Navara Prime. Marcus, in turn, asked about her past, her experiences, and how she had ended up on the streets. Her story was heartbreaking, but told with dignity. She had escaped a colony that had experimented on her kind, a place that valued profit over life, and she had been wandering the galaxy, searching for a safe place to belong. As the night wore on, Marcus realized he had never felt so connected to someone so different from himself. She wasn't just another being in the universe. She was remarkable, intelligent, resilient. And here, in the quiet hours of the night, they shared something fragile but powerful, mutual understanding and respect. By morning, the city outside had awakened in its usual rush of sound and light. Marcus stirred, and Vera was already up, quietly preparing a simple breakfast. The kitchen filled with the scent of lightly toasted bread and warm tea. Marcus watched her, still amazed at how seamlessly she had adapted to his life, despite the vast differences in their backgrounds. "I'll go out today," she said, noticing him observing her. "I want to explore the market and get some supplies for you." He nodded. "All right, take whatever you need, I'll cover it." She smiled faintly, an expression that warmed him in a way he hadn't expected. "Thank you," she said, and there was no other meaning in it than gratitude. That day, as Marcus continued his work, he found himself thinking about her more than he had expected. Not in a romantic way, not yet, but in a way that made him aware of how rare such a connection was. In the city of Nivara Prime, where beings from countless worlds crossed paths, he had never encountered anyone quite like Vera. And now she was here in his apartment, quietly becoming a part of his life. The week passed quickly. Vera continued to clean, organize, and bring order to Marcus's world. She learned the quirks of human technology and showed him ways to improve efficiency in his lab. Marcus, in turn, shared with her stories of humanity's first steps into space, the mistakes and victories, the hope that still burned brightly in their species. It wasn't just work. They had small rituals, morning tea together, quiet walks on the balcony to watch the city lights, discussions about their dreams and fears. Marcus began to see Vera not only as someone who had helped tidy his apartment, but as a companion in thought, a partner in curiosity. Late one night, he realized that the presence he had felt in his bed that first night was not just about trust. It was about the beginning of something new, something that neither of them could have predicted. They were both different from the world around them, yet they had found a quiet space where they belonged, together but independently, sharing knowledge, respect, and a fragile hope. Marcus smiled to himself, realizing that the universe, vast and chaotic, had a strange way of bringing the right beings together at the right moment. Vera had entered his life quietly, humbly, and yet her presence had already changed it profoundly. As he looked out over the city that night, he understood something that had eluded him for years. Sometimes the smallest acts, offering shelter, extending trust, sharing a meal, could ripple into something greater than anyone could imagine. He didn't yet know what the future held for them, but he knew that it had begun here, quietly, with an alien woman who had arrived as a stranger and became, in unexpected ways, someone central to his life. The night hummed softly around them, a city alive with lights and movement, yet inside Marcus's apartment, there was a rare stillness. The start of a connection, the start of a story that neither human nor alien could have fully predicted, had begun. And neither of them could deny the subtle thrill of the unknown that lay ahead. The next morning, Marcus woke to the soft hum of his apartment's air circulation system. The sunlight spilled across the floor, reflecting off the polished surfaces that Vera had cleaned with care. He stretched, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and curiosity. Vera was already in the kitchen, preparing a light breakfast. "Good morning," she said, her golden eyes reflecting the early light. "I thought we could try something different today. I found some fruits from the lower markets. They are unusual, but I think you'll like them." Marcus nodded. "I trust your judgment." He had learned quickly that when it came to Vera, her intuition was often right. She moved around the kitchen with ease, handling the strange fruits with a careful precision, peeling, slicing, and arranging them on a plate. As they ate, Marcus asked her about her time in the lower levels of the city. "It must be strange," he said, "living among humans and aliens who barely notice you." Vera nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It was quiet. People rarely interacted with me except to ask for money or food, but the quiet gave me time to think, to learn. I learned how humans speak, how they act, and I learned how to observe without being noticed." Marcus was impressed. He had spent years studying alien behavior through instruments and observation, yet here was Vera, who had learned much more through lived experience. He realized that she possessed a kind of intelligence that was not measured by books or machines, but by her ability to survive and adapt. After breakfast, Marcus returned to his lab. Vera had insisted on helping him organize his latest research on alien communication frequencies. She worked silently beside him, her hands moving deftly over the equipment. She adjusted circuits, labeled files, and even suggested minor improvements to his devices. Marcus marveled at her capability. By mid-afternoon, he leaned back in his chair, exhausted but exhilarated. "I didn't know I needed this until you came," he admitted. "I've been so focused on my work that I forgot what it meant to have someone notice the little details." "Someone notice me?" Vera paused, looking up at him. "Sometimes the smallest gestures make the biggest difference," she said softly. Her words were simple, yet Marcus felt their weight. It was true, not only in cleaning or organizing, but in the way she had entered his life, quietly but deliberately. Later, Marcus had to step out to attend a meeting with some researchers from another planet. He left Vera in charge of the apartment, trusting her completely. When he returned, he found the apartment not only clean but arranged in a way that was more harmonious than he had imagined. "You did all this?" he asked, genuinely astonished. Vera smiled. "It felt right. The apartment should be a place where one can think clearly. And I wanted it to be comfortable for you." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. There was something profoundly human about her gesture, even though she was not human. It was a reminder of the best aspects of humanity: empathy, kindness, and thoughtfulness. That evening, Marcus suggested they explore the city together. Vera had been confined to his apartment for only a few days, and he thought it might be good for her to see more of the world she was now a part of. She agreed, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. The streets of Navara Prime were alive with color, sound, and motion. Alien merchants called out from their stalls, offering exotic goods, shimmering fabrics, and strange foods. Hovercars zipped past overhead, leaving glowing trails in their wake. Humans and aliens mingled, often ignoring each other, yet sharing the same space in a chaotic but fascinating harmony. Vera walked beside Marcus, her movements graceful. She observed everything: the small vendors, the glowing advertisements, the way humans and aliens navigated the crowds. She asked questions, not out of ignorance, but from a genuine desire to understand this part of the universe she had never explored. "You know," Marcus said as they paused near a street musician playing a strange instrument that produced lights instead of sound, "I didn't think I'd find someone like you here. Someone extraordinary." Vera turned to him, her expression unreadable but calm. "I think extraordinary is in the eye of the beholder," she said, "and sometimes it is found in unexpected places." Marcus smiled. Her perspective was refreshing. It reminded him that life was not only about schedules, research, and discovery. It was also about connection, observation, and appreciating the small, extraordinary moments that appeared when least expected. As they walked deeper into the market, they encountered a section that specialized in alien artifacts. Strange devices, some glowing faintly, others humming with energy, were displayed under protective fields. Marcus's scientific curiosity flared. He examined several pieces, explaining their potential uses and origins to Vera. She listened intently, asking questions that were insightful and sometimes pointed, showing a depth of understanding that impressed him. "You have a gift," he said finally, turning to her. "You understand things quickly, faster than some humans I've worked with for years." Vera shook her head gently. "I have only learned to pay attention, to see patterns. Humans and aliens alike leave traces of their actions. Observing them teaches lessons." The night grew deeper, and the city lights brightened, reflecting in Vera's golden eyes. Marcus realized he had never felt so alive in the bustling streets. Yet amid the chaos, he also felt a growing sense of responsibility. Vera was not just a helper or a companion. She had become someone important in his life. They returned to the apartment late in the evening. Vera was quiet during the walk back, as if lost in thought. Marcus respected her silence. He knew that trust and connection were not built on constant conversation, but on understanding, presence, and shared experience. The next morning, Marcus received an urgent message from his research contacts. They had detected unusual signals from a nearby sector of the galaxy. signals that suggested an unknown alien species might be attempting to communicate, or perhaps reach out to humanity for help. Marcus knew that the opportunity to investigate such a discovery could change everything. He turned to Vera, who had been reading quietly in the living area. "I might need to leave for a few days," he said. "It's important work. I don't want to go alone." Vera tilted her head, her golden eyes meeting his. "I can come," she said simply. "I can help." Marcus hesitated. He had never considered taking anyone with him on a mission like this, yet the idea of facing the unknown without her seemed impossible now. There was a trust between them that went beyond words, and he knew he could not ignore it. "All right," he said finally. "But we need to be careful. This could be dangerous, though not in a violent way. We are exploring, communicating, learning. That is what matters." Vera nodded. "I understand. Learning is worth the risk." The preparation took the rest of the day. They packed supplies, checked the equipment, and reviewed the data Marcus had collected. Vera's efficiency and insight proved invaluable. She anticipated what he might forget, adjusted devices to maximize functionality, and even suggested small improvements to their communication protocols. Marcus realized that without her, this mission would have been far more difficult. By nightfall, they were ready. The small shuttle that would take them to the outer sector of the galaxy awaited. Marcus piloted the shuttle, Vera assisting with the instruments. As the city of Nivara Prime receded behind them, glowing like a cluster of stars, Marcus felt a thrill of anticipation. This was the moment when his work, his curiosity, and his life with Vera would converge into something new. The journey through space was quiet but filled with unspoken understanding. Vera monitored instruments, calculated trajectories, and adjusted communication arrays. Marcus watched her, marveling at her skill and calmness. She was not merely surviving, she was thriving, and in doing so, she elevated everything around her. Hours passed, the shuttle gliding through the void of space until finally the signals grew stronger. Unknown shapes appeared on the scanners, moving in patterns that suggested intelligence. Marcus's heart raced. This was the culmination of years of research and preparation, yet it was also a test of their collaboration, trust, and adaptability. Vera turned to him, her expression steady. "Are you ready?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "I think we are." They approached the source carefully, scanning the area. It was a world that shimmered with light and color, unlike anything Marcus had seen before. Floating structures, glowing with energy, hovered above the surface. There was no hostility detected, only signals that seemed to beckon them closer. "This is incredible," Marcus whispered. "We might be the first humans to witness this civilization." Vera observed silently, then said, "And we will learn from it, together." As they prepared to land, Marcus realized something profound. Vera was no longer just a helper or even a companion. She was a partner in discovery, someone who had brought a perspective, resilience, and intelligence that was as essential as his own. In the vastness of space, where uncertainty and danger lurked at every turn, their connection, human and alien, companionable and respectful, was a strength neither could ignore. The shuttle touched down softly on the shimmering surface. The lights of the alien world bathed the cabin in hues of blue and gold. Marcus and Vera stepped out together, ready to meet the unknown, ready to explore, and ready to face whatever challenges awaited, not as a human and an alien, but as allies united by trust, curiosity, and the unspoken bond that had begun in a small, quiet apartment high above. Nivara Prime. And in that moment, Marcus knew that this mission, like their growing connection, would change everything. The surface of the alien world was unlike anything Marcus or Vera had ever seen. The ground shimmered as if made of liquid crystal, reflecting the faint light of distant suns in patterns that danced under their feet. Towering structures hovered above, their forms geometric but alien, pulsing with a soft inner glow. Strange currents of air carried scents that neither human nor Vera's species had experienced before, sweet, metallic, and electric all at once. Marcus took careful steps, scanning everything with his instruments. "No signs of danger yet," he muttered, though the words felt inadequate. The environment itself was alive with unfamiliar energy, and every shadow, every light seemed to hint at intelligence beyond their understanding. Vera walked beside him, her golden eyes wide with fascination. "It feels aware," she said quietly, "like the planet itself is observing us." Marcus nodded. He had learned from years of research that sentient civilizations often left subtle traces in their surroundings, but this world seemed to exude awareness itself. It was a hum of energy, a pulse beneath the ground, a shimmer in the air that made him feel simultaneously insignificant and privileged to witness it. As they ventured further, the structures began to shift subtly, moving as if in response to their presence. Marcus's instruments picked up faint signals, patterns in electromagnetic fields, pulses of light and vibration. "They're trying to communicate," he whispered, "or at least detect us." Vera crouched beside a glowing panel embedded in the ground. Her hands hovered over the surface, and she began to trace patterns in the energy, almost instinctively. Marcus watched in awe as she deciphered the faint pulses and translated them into a simple form of communication. "They are cautious," Vera said, her voice steady. "They want to understand us before we touch them. They are intelligent but careful, curious." Marcus smiled. "That's incredible. You're doing something I've studied my whole life, and yet you are faster, more precise." She shrugged lightly. "I observe, I adapt, that is all." Hours passed as they explored, carefully noting every detail. Marcus recorded everything, but he found himself increasingly distracted by Vera's abilities. She was not just helping. She was teaching him, guiding him through a world he had never imagined. Every discovery she made revealed not only the alien species' intelligence, but also humanity's potential to connect, adapt, and learn. As they approached a particularly large structure, the energy pulses intensified. The building hovered several meters above the shimmering ground, its surface shifting like liquid metal. Marcus's instruments registered rapid fluctuations in electromagnetic fields. "It's responding," he said. "To us, I think." Vera placed her hand lightly on the surface. "It is curious about us," she said. "We must respond carefully. Our actions will determine how much it trusts us." Marcus nodded. He realized that their success depended on more than technology. It depended on understanding, empathy, and communication, the very traits that defined humanity at its best. Suddenly, a series of light patterns projected from the structure, forming shapes that seemed to float in the air. Marcus studied them, attempting to match them to any known form of language. But it was Vera who stepped forward, recognizing the patterns as symbolic representations rather than phonetic or numeric codes. "They are introducing themselves," she whispered. "Or perhaps inviting dialogue." Marcus watched as Vera moved her hands in careful gestures, mimicking the patterns. Slowly, the floating symbols shifted, responding to her. Marcus felt a surge of amazement. Here was a being, alien and human together, bridging a gap that no human alone could have crossed. Hours passed as they established a primitive but effective method of communication. They exchanged concepts, names, and simple ideas. The alien intelligence seemed patient, cautious, yet eager to learn. Marcus realized that this was one of the first true interspecies dialogues in human history, and that Vera had been instrumental in making it possible. By late afternoon, they took a break near a pool of liquid crystal that reflected the alien sun in dazzling colors. Marcus sat on a smooth edge, taking in the scene. "You know," he said, "I never imagined I would find someone like you. You're extraordinary, Vera. Not just for your skills, but for how you see the world." Vera looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I see patterns, I see connections, I see trust and curiosity where others might see danger. And you see potential in everything. That is why we work well together." Marcus felt a deep sense of respect and admiration. He realized that HFY, humanity at its best, wasn't just about exploration or technological superiority. It was about curiosity, empathy, and the ability to connect with beings who were different from us. Vera embodied that ideal, not just for herself, but for humanity as a whole. As evening fell, the structure projected new patterns, this time more complex and layered. Marcus and Vera studied them carefully, attempting to respond with gestures, device outputs, and subtle light signals. They worked in harmony, each anticipating the other's actions, creating a dialogue that felt almost like a dance. Suddenly, a new phenomenon occurred. A portion of the structure opened, revealing a glowing passageway that seemed to lead inward. Marcus hesitated. "Do we enter?" he asked, uncertain. Vera's eyes glimmered. "Yes, carefully, this is an invitation. It may be an opportunity to learn more, to understand their civilization better." They stepped inside. The interior was a marvel of engineering and organic design, with walls that pulsed with soft light and floors that seemed to respond to their movements. Marcus activated his instruments, recording everything, while Vera moved confidently, reading the energy patterns as if she could hear them. Inside, they discovered more advanced technology, devices that manipulated energy, communicated through light, and monitored their every movement. Marcus realized that the intelligence here was unlike any he had encountered. They were not just curious, they were creators, thinkers, and observers. Vera examined one device, her fingers tracing its contours. "They are testing us," she said. "Not to harm, but to understand how we think, how we act. Our responses will guide their perception of us." Marcus nodded. "It's like first contact protocol, but alive." Hours turned into night, and they continued exploring, learning, and adapting. Marcus's admiration for Vera grew with each passing moment. She was not only intelligent, but intuitive, able to anticipate and respond in ways that bridged the vast differences between species. As they prepared to leave the interior, the structure projected a final pattern. This time it seemed to contain not just information, but an offer, a suggestion that Marcus and Vera could return at will, that the intelligence would continue to communicate, to teach, and to share. Marcus turned to Vera, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. "We did it. We established something incredible." Vera nodded, her expression calm but satisfied. "Yes, and we have only just begun. This is the start of something greater for both our species." They returned to the shuttle, exhausted but exhilarated. Marcus piloted them back toward Navara Prime, reflecting on the day's events. He realized that the true discovery was not just the alien intelligence, but the partnership he had found in Vera. Together they had navigated uncertainty, danger, and the unknown, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected. The journey home was quiet. Vera monitored the shuttle's systems, occasionally pointing out minor adjustments. Marcus watched her, realizing that in the vastness of space, amid civilizations that were still strangers to humanity, he had found something rare, a companion, an ally, and a mirror of humanity's best qualities. By the time they returned to their apartment, the city of Navara Prime had shifted to its night cycle, glowing like a constellation below. Marcus stepped out of the shuttle, stretching, and glanced at Vera. "We've changed a lot in just one day," he said softly. Vera's golden eyes met his. "Yes, and there is more to learn, more to see. We must continue together." Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had not known before. Their partnership was no longer about cleaning, organizing, or even survival. It was about exploration, understanding, and the quiet, profound power of connection. That night, as they reviewed the data they had collected, Marcus realized that this was only the beginning. The alien intelligence was patient, the universe vast, and their journey just starting. And he knew one thing for certain. With Vera by his side, he was ready for whatever the galaxy had in store. He looked at her as she adjusted some equipment, golden eyes reflecting the city lights. Somehow, amidst the chaos of stars, strange worlds, and alien life, he felt at peace. Humanity's strength was not only in its technology or intellect, it was in its capacity to trust, to connect, and to see value in beings who were different. And Vera, an alien, a survivor, and now an irreplaceable companion, embodied that strength perfectly. As the night stretched on, Marcus felt a quiet thrill. They had touched the unknown, learned from it, and returned. Tomorrow, the universe would offer new challenges, and together they would meet them. But tonight, they allowed themselves a moment of reflection, a moment of understanding that the true adventure had only just begun. The day after returning from the alien world, Marcus woke to the familiar hum of his apartment. But instead of settling into his usual routine, he found himself restless, his mind replaying every moment of their journey. Vera was already awake, sitting near the window, observing the city below. Her golden eyes reflected the light of Navara Prime, but there was a seriousness in her expression that Marcus hadn't seen before. "You're thinking about them again," she said quietly, not turning to look at him. "I can't help it," Marcus admitted. "What we saw, the intelligence, the structures, it's unlike anything I've ever studied, and we barely scratched the surface." Vera nodded. "Yes, and there is more to understand, but we must also prepare. Knowledge is valuable only if we are ready to apply it." Marcus realized she was right. Their first encounter had been remarkable, but the true test was ahead. The alien intelligence had invited dialogue, but it had also challenged them, tested their understanding and patience. Returning meant more than curiosity. It meant responsibility. They spent the morning reviewing the data from the previous day. Marcus's instruments recorded energy fluctuations, light patterns, and structural behaviors, but it was Vera who noticed subtle details he had overlooked. The patterns in the light were not random. They were a sequence, almost like a code, and Vera suggested they could represent concepts rather than words. "See here," she said, pointing at a sequence on the data pad. "This is repeated every time we move a certain way." "They are teaching through interaction." Marcus leaned closer, amazed. He had spent years studying alien languages and communication methods, but Vera's insight was intuitive, almost instinctive. "You're incredible," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "I wouldn't have seen that without you." Vera tilted her head. "We make a good team. Observation and analysis together reveal more than either alone." By afternoon, they prepared for their second journey to the alien world. This time, they carried additional equipment to record more detailed data, sensors to track energy patterns, and devices to test environmental responses. Marcus felt a thrill of anticipation. Their first visit had been cautious and exploratory, but now they were returning as collaborators, as learners, and as representatives of humanity. The shuttle glided through the void, silent except for the faint hum of the engines. Vera monitored the instruments, adjusting for the subtle gravitational fluctuations near the alien world. Marcus watched her, marveling at her precision. She moved with confidence, but there was also care in her actions, a deep understanding of how every detail mattered. When they arrived, the alien world welcomed them with the same pulsing glow. But this time, Marcus noticed subtle changes. The structures seemed more aware, responding to their approach with patterns that were both familiar and new. "They remembered us," Marcus whispered. "Or at least recognized our signals," Vera observed quietly. "They are cautious but expectant. We must respond with patience." They stepped onto the shimmering surface. The liquid crystal ground reflected the alien sun in rippling patterns. Marcus activated his instruments, scanning the structures, while Vera extended her hands toward a floating panel. She traced patterns in the energy, just as she had done before, and the alien structures responded, opening new pathways and revealing new chambers. Inside, the complexity of the structures increased. Energy conduits crisscrossed the interior, glowing softly. Holographic images appeared, depicting abstract representations of planets, stars, and beings. Marcus's mind raced to interpret the data, but Vera's observations guided him. She recognized symmetry, repetition, and relational patterns that suggested a sophisticated form of teaching. "They are showing us connections," she said. "Between themselves, their environment, and us. They want to share understanding, not just information." Marcus realized the truth in her words. This intelligence was not simply advanced, it was patient, thoughtful, and deeply intelligent. It approached communication not as domination or control, but as mutual learning. Humanity had a lot to gain if they could understand and respond appropriately. As they explored, they encountered new challenges. Certain areas of the structure required precise movements and gestures to activate, almost like a complex puzzle. Marcus attempted to respond using technology alone, but Vera's intuitive approach succeeded where instruments failed. She guided him, adjusting gestures, sequencing their actions, and decoding subtle energy shifts. "You see," she said softly, "the key is understanding, not just force. They measure our perception and adaptability." Marcus nodded, impressed. It was a lesson not only in communication, but in the essence of intelligence itself. The alien world was a mirror, reflecting the best qualities of those who approached it with patience, respect, and curiosity. Hours passed as they explored, learned, and interacted with the alien structures. Marcus felt exhilaration unlike anything in his previous research. This was discovery in its purest form, not just observing, but participating, connecting, and growing alongside another form of life. By late afternoon, they reached a chamber that seemed central to the alien world's energy network. Pulses of light converged on a central node, and the floor vibrated faintly under their feet. Marcus studied the patterns, attempting to map the energy flows, while Vera extended her senses, feeling the rhythms of the structures. "They are showing us balance," she said. "Everything here is connected. Energy, information, movement, all are parts of a greater whole." Marcus marveled at the concept. Humanity often sought to control or dominate, but this intelligence emphasized harmony, cooperation, and understanding. And Vera, human or alien in essence, was the perfect bridge to grasp it. Suddenly, a subtle shift occurred. The central node began to pulse faster, projecting a three-dimensional pattern into the air. Marcus recognized it as a form of symbolic representation, perhaps a map or guide. Vera moved closer, reading the energy shifts and tracing them with her hands. Slowly, the pattern changed, responding to her presence and adjustments. "They are inviting us to participate," she said. "Not just observe, they want us to learn through interaction." Marcus felt a mixture of awe and determination. This was more than science or exploration. It was a test of adaptability, perception, and cooperation. Every step, every gesture mattered, and he trusted Vera implicitly to guide them. Hours turned into evening as they worked through the complex patterns. Their communication with the alien intelligence deepened. Marcus realized that the partnership he shared with Vera was crucial. Alone, he might have been overwhelmed or misinterpreted the signals. But together, they complemented each other's strengths, his analytical mind, her intuitive perception, and achieved what neither could have done alone. Finally, after a long cycle of interaction, the central node stabilized. The energy pulses softened, and the projections solidified into a clear pattern. Marcus and Vera understood it as a record of their success, a recognition of their understanding, patience, and cooperation. "They acknowledge us," Marcus said, a mixture of relief and wonder in his voice. "We've passed the first stage," Vera nodded, "and they will continue to teach. We must be ready for more. There is still much to learn." As they prepared to leave, Marcus reflected on the day's events. The alien intelligence had challenged them, tested them, and guided them. But the true discovery was not just the world or its technology. It was the bond between human and alien, between curiosity and intuition, between observation and understanding. Back in their shuttle, Marcus watched Vera monitor the instruments. She was quiet but alert, her golden eyes reflecting the stars outside. He realized that in the vastness of space, amid unknown worlds and civilizations, they had created a small but profound partnership, one built on trust, respect, and the shared drive to learn. Returning to Navara Prime, they were greeted by the city's neon glow, a reminder that humanity's world was just one among many. Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their journey was far from over. The alien world had many lessons to teach, and they were only beginning to understand its depth. That night, as they reviewed their data in the apartment, Marcus felt something shift within himself. He had always valued exploration, discovery, and knowledge. But now he understood that true advancement required collaboration, empathy, and adaptability. Humanity's strength was not only in its technology, but in its ability to trust, to connect, and to learn from others, whether human or alien. Vera sat beside him, organizing the patterns they had recorded. "We are ready for the next stage," she said softly, "and we will learn more together." Marcus nodded. He realized that this partnership, born from necessity and trust, was a model for humanity's future. In a galaxy filled with unknowns, connection, curiosity, and cooperation were the keys to survival, understanding, and growth. And in that quiet apartment, high above the city, he felt the profound significance of their journey. It was more than discovery. It was a testament to what humanity could achieve when it approached the universe with patience, humility, and the courage to trust. For Marcus and Vera, the adventure was just beginning. The alien world awaited, filled with mysteries, lessons, and challenges. And together they would face them all, not as master and servant, not as human and alien, but as partners, explorers, and friends united by curiosity, intelligence, and the quiet strength of trust.